Hello, hello, Logic students. Good to see you again. We are about to move into the next unit. This is the next to last unit for the spring semester. This is the unit on categorical syllogisms, and then categorical propositions, and categorical syllogisms. As you remember from definitions, a proposition itself is simply a statement, but it is a type of statement in which a claim is being made, and that claim obviously has to have some truth or falsity to it, right? And then a syllogism, as we've said before, is a type of argument in which there are specifically two premises and one conclusion, right? And so we understand those as our basis of definitions as we move into categorical propositions and categorical syllogisms. Just as a disclaimer, like, there's nobody in this room right now. A coronavirus, shit is real, as I say. But no, there's nobody in this room, and so it is it's kind of strange, right? But we're gonna make it happen, right? So I'm gonna give you 3 videos, I think, on this unit. Just try to knock this out today, but they'll be in separate sections. So we're just gonna move right now for about a half hour, 40 minutes. Then I'll press pause, give me something to drink, to take a break, come back, all right? So right now you should have your chapter with you, the unit chapter that is entitled, What is a Categorical Proposition? You should have that in front of you right now. You should have both of them in front of you, obviously, that and the categorical syllogism chapter. But you should have those readings in front of you, right? So we're gonna move as I normally do in class, right? I'm gonna lecture, then I'll come back and revisit it until I hammer it in, and we'll move forward, okay? Any questions, obviously, email me, give me a call, that kind of thing, right? So let's move. So a categorical proposition is, again, a proposition in which there are categories or classes of things being discussed, right? There are 2 classes of things, right? Think about just 3rd, 4th grade English, right? There's a subject and a predicate, right? And so you have 2 classes of things, right? There's a subject class and a predicate class, right? And so if I said that all students are at home right now, right? Then there is a class of students and there's a class of entities or people that are at home right now, right? So all students are at home right now, right? All students would be your subject class, are is your verb, right? Your copula, as we say. And then at home, or people at home, or entities at home would be my predicate class, right? So all students are at home right now, right? That is I'm talking about 2 classes of things, 2 categories of things, the categories of students and the categories of entities or people who are at home right now, right? That's what we mean by a categorical proposition, right? And so there are 4, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 standard form categorical propositions. I've already started my board, so I'm just gonna kind of go through it. If you have your notebooks, go ahead and take it out, right? There are 4 standard form categorical propositions. There's the A proposition, the E proposition, the I proposition, and the O proposition, right? The A proposition reads, all of something is something, right? What I just said, right? All students are at home right now, right? The E proposition reads, no S is P, no subject is a part of the predicate, right? The I proposition is some subject is a part of the predicate, and the O proposition is some subject is not a part of the predicate, right? Again, this is the A, the E, the I, and the O proposition. 4 standard categorical form propositions, the A, the E, the I, and the O. How do we separate those, right? We separate those by virtue of what we call quality and quantity, right? So when we say all S is P, all obviously has universal quantity, right? So the A proposition is a universal proposition, right? And the quality is the affirmation or the negation of the predicate, right? Or of something in there, actually. It's the affirmation or the negation of it, right? And so if all S is something, that means that I am affirming it, so the A proposition is also called a universal affirmative proposition. right? The A proposition is also called a universal affirmative proposition. These are going to be important information to know, quality and quantity, as we get to the last section of this unit where we're trying to actually solve for validity of arguments, right? So the A proposition has universal quantity and affirmative quality. The E proposition, no, right? None, right? None, no, right? If you're from the South, ain't nan, right? That kind of thing, right? No, no, no. No also has universality, right? Right? So it's a universal, is a universal quantity. But obviously no has a negative quality, right? So as you can imagine then, if all or no is universal, some then we would call particular, right? So the I proposition has particular quantity. Some students are at home right now, right? Some is particular, but it still has affirmative quality. And then the O proposition still has particularity, so it's particular quantity, excuse me. And but some S is not, is negative quality. Right? And so think about common conversations, right? Some of the people at the party are not having fun, right? So again, if some people ain't having fun, right, then that would make it an I, right? They make an O proposition, excuse me. Make an O proposition, some are not, right? If you went to the store and then you saw that the yellow tags are 50% off, and the red tags are 25% off, and the blue tags are 75% off, then we know that some tags have different quality and have different percentages, right? So if I walk into the store and I say, oh man, everything is 75% off. That's not true. Some things are 75% off, right? So that's what we understand about how do we convert language into categorical propositions. Because remember, as we've talked before, logic is formal, right? Although obviously the last part we'll get into informal logic, but most logic, for those of us who are logicians, we're processing it in variables and formats and things like that. And so we're trying to determine whether or not an argument actually has validity based on the form of it, right? And so when we can translate a statement into one of these four-form categorical propositions, there's a lot of things we can determine about that statement and its relationship to other statements, right? We'll get to that here in a minute, right? So again, let's recap, right? There are four standard form categorical propositions, right? There's the A, the E, the I, and the O, right? In these four standard forms, we call those, we say that each of those propositions have quality and quantity, right? The universal affirmative is the A proposition. The universal negative is the E proposition. The particular affirmative is the I proposition. And the particular negative is the O proposition, right? So for the next, whatever few days or weeks that you're working on this unit, we're going to be talking in AEIs and O's, right? And not even know sometime Y's, right? We're going straight A, I, and O. And so if I asked you, for instance, is this statement, which standard form categorical statement is this, right? Then you should be able to say that's an A, that's an E, that's an I, that's an O. Why? Because you're looking for the quality and quantity of the statement. It may not be as pure, as you'll see in your workbook, it may not be as clean as all S is P, or no this and that. But if I said that some of the people in the class don't have access to internet, right? Then we know it's not an A proposition. Why? Because one, we talk about particularity, and two, we're talking about negativity, right? So if we're talking about particular negatives, bam, it's an O proposition, right? So if we think about it this way, as a universal affirmative, a universal negative, a particular affirmative, a particular negative, if we're thinking about that as we're reading, as we're thinking, as we're listening to our friends, and we're asking and we're processing what it is that they're actually saying, which we can say in our minds, once we get in the hang of this logic thing, we can say in our minds, he or she is operating under a particular negative proposition, right? So now, once I know that operating under a particular negative, I know there's certain things that they can or cannot say based on that information, right? We'll get to that here in a second, right? So boom, that's where we are right now. 4 standard form categorical propositions, A, I, and O. The A proposition has a universal quantity, affirmative quality. The E proposition has universal quantity, negative quality. The I proposition has a particular quantity, affirmative quality. And the O proposition has particular quantity and negative quality, right? So we have our 4 standard forms, right? Now we want to ask ourselves, so what do we know about this? What can we do about this, right? So the next thing we're talking about is distribution, right? Right? And by distribution, what I mean is, what can be said if anything, about all members of a class? Okay. So a term has distribution. A term has distribution if we can say we're talking about all the members of that class. It could be the subject class, it could be the predicate class, it could be both, it could be neither, right? What are we saying about all the members of that class? Remember, we have to lock that into our brain cells here as we're thinking about distribution. I'm talking about, can we say anything about all the members of the subject or the predicate or both? Right? All the members, right? So let's take the A proposition. Well, the A proposition almost tells on itself, right? All S is P. So that means of every member of the S class, it exists in the members of the P class, right? All S is P, right? So all of the subject is a part of the predicate, right? So again, if we're thinking about it in terms of Venn diagrams, going back to our old school days, if this is S and this is P, and what I'm saying is all of S is in P, right? All of S is in P. So that means I can distribute the subject class into the predicate class because all of these members fit within the predicate class, right? So the A proposition, the A distributes the subject. Now, the question is the P distributed? Now, what do we mean again? It means, are we saying anything about all the members of the P class? Well, in the A proposition, where all S is P, we're not saying anything about the P class, right? We're not saying anything about all its members, right? So if all S is P, if all students are studying from home, right, or working at home, right, then we're saying all students. We can put all the universal affirmative class of students can be placed into the class of people or entities that are studying at home. But if we took all the entities that are studying at home, that's going to be other people than students. It's going to be some government workers. It's going to be your mama. It's going to be your cousin. It's going to be all kind of folk that's at home studying, doing something who are not students, right? So I can distribute in the A proposition, I can distribute the class of subject into the predicate. But all this other stuff over here, going back to the Venn diagram visualization, if this is only the S part here, All this other stuff ain't got nothing to do with the S part. Right? All the doctors and the lawyers and your auntie and your grandmama and all them, they at home too. But they're not students. Right? So in that case, the A proposition distributes the subject, but it does not distribute the predicate. In the A, it distributes the subject, but not distribute the predicate, or another way to say, the A subject only. Right? The A distributes the subject only. So when somebody gives an A proposition, I'm only talking about all the members of the subject class. I'm not saying nothing about the predicate class other than the fact that the subject class exists inside of it. That's all I'm saying, right? Now the E proposition. No S is P. So no S is P. So if no student is at home studying, then that means of all the people in the student class, right? Remember, because the E is universality, right? So of all the people of the subject class, of all of them, none of them exist in the predicate, meaning in this case, in this existence example, we're saying are at home studying, right? So no students are at home studying. That means none of the subject exists in the predicate. What's the predicate? The entities are people that are at home studying. No students are at home studying. So I can take the entire class, the entire group of students, and I'm saying something about them. I'm saying of all these people, none of them exist there, right? So in the E proposition, the E distributes the subject. Right? Why does it distribute the subject? Because again, it's saying something about all the members of the class. No S is P, none of them. So I'm saying of all of them, ain't none of them, right? None of them. So that's universality, that's negation. We have an E proposition, it distributes the subject. But here's the thing, if no students are at home studying, that means of all the people who are working from home, none of them are students, right? So again, of all the people that are there, I can then say that none of them, all of them are not. None are not in the S class, right? So again, the same way that none of the sub-students are working from home, none of the people who are working from home are students in an E proposition, right? So I'm saying something about all the people who are working from home in the E. All the predicate of all those people in the predicate class, none of them exist in the subject class, right? So they have exclusive classification, right? So none of them are there, which means I'm talking about all of them, which means the E proposition does distribute the predicate, right? So the E distributes both, right? Both what? Both subject and predicate, right? Now, what about the I? The I. Some students, stop there. Some students. I'm already not talking about all of them, right? So in the I proposition, I already know that the subject is not being distributed, right? Subject not distributed, right? Some. I'm not talking about all. So some S is P, I'm not talking about all of them. By definition, the distribution says, what are we talking about all the members? The I says nothing about all the members, so already the subject is not distributed, right? Now, in the I proposition, some S is P, I'm also not saying nothing about all the members of the predicate class. If some students are at home, are working from home, right? Then the members of the people in the predicate class, the class of people who are working from home, I'm not saying nothing about all those people, right? I'm saying that some of them are students. I mean, some of them are, some of them ain't, that kind of thing, right? Same thing we said about the A proposition, right? So the A and the I is similar in that sense because the predicate is not distributed. Right? So the I distributes neither. Right? Both subject and predicate, neither subject or predicate. Right? You with me? Right? Remember, distribution is talking about what are we saying about all the members of that particular class. The class is in the subject class and the people that are in the predicate class. Right? In the A, we're saying all of the subject exists in the predicate. In the E, we're saying none of the subject, which is the universality, all ain't, right? It just happened to be negative, right? All isn't, excuse me for my, my country grammar. But hey, I'm working from home right now. And I'm not I guess I am Dr. Bailey in this moment. But really, I'm just a dude that lives on Woodlawn Avenue, right? So, a scholar in residence. I like that, right? So here we go. So, right, the E distributes both, right, subject and predicate, because I'm saying that neither nor, either or, neither nor, if you will, the subject exists in the predicate, and the predicate does not exist in the subject either. All of those members, so that's why I say the E proposition distributes both subject and predicate, right? The I proposition, I'm saying some S is P, right? So that means that I'm not talking about all of them, so the subject is not. And then even the class of predicates, I'm not talking about all of them, right? So it's not, right? The last one, I don't know if you can see this low, so I'm going to go ahead and put it up here. So go ahead and put it right here, the O, right? So some S is not P. Some S is not P. Well, we already know that the sum S already tells us the same thing it told in the I, right? So not the subject. Right? So the subject is not distributed. But what about the predicate? Right? Some S is not P. What about the predicate? Now your first inkling is going to say, well, it's particular, and so think about all of them, and so it can't be distributed because distribution is talking about all the members. So then I say, you're right. But then let's look at the word choice of an I proposition, of an O proposition. The class of not P. Right? That's the class we're talking about. The class of not P. So, whatever the class of not P is, right? Right? So again, if in this case, the class of people who are working from home, right? So entities are working at home, right? So working from home is my predicate. So I'm saying now we have a class of people not working from home. So if all the members of the class of people who ain't working from home, some of them, right, some of the subject is in that entire class. Or another way I look at that, I can take that entire class of people who are not working from home, right, and put them into the class of students. So the O is tricky, but understand this. What it's saying is that yes, I'm not saying nothing about the subject, all the members of the subject, but I am saying something about all the members of the predicate. Because of all the members of the predicate class, I mean the class of the people who are working from home, and I'm saying there are some people who are not working from home. So of those members who are not working from home, all members who are not working from home, excuse me, that class can be distributed into some students, right? So the O is not, predicate is. So, in your notebooks, what you should have right now is Recap, close it up, shut this unit, shut this section down. We began this conversation by saying, listen, there are 4 standard form categorical propositions. There's the A, the E, the I, the O. Of these 4 standard form categorical propositions, we call them categorical propositions because they are propositions that, yes, makes a claim, and that claim has to be true or false, what I call propositions, and not just sentences, right? But they're categorical because the subject and predicate are classes or entities in themselves. They're categories in themselves. And so we say that we can translate most statements, most propositions into categorical propositions when we're talking about 2 classes of things, right? We separate those into 4 letters, the A, the E, the I, the O, right? Now, if we weren't working from home, I would spend time and talk about how, for instance, I'll say, all the old school philosophers would, Aristotle and all those folk would talk about how the A and the I, affirmo and nego in Latin, and the A and the I are affirmative propositions, the E and the O are negative propositions, right? This is where these letters come from, if you will, right? And that's just, we don't need all that for this unit. You're working from home, you're drinking Kool-Aid, orange juice, eating some eggs, you might be drinking a little something stronger. You ain't got time to get into all those old school folk, medieval and even ancient folk talking about philosophy. We need to get to what do these entities mean? How do we relate these things? How can I enhance my philosophical analysis and keep moving? So you know what? Let's not even act like I said this. I don't even know why I brought it up. If I didn't want you to know it, I shouldn't have put it on the board. Now, that's crazy. But let's keep moving, right? So A, I, and O, right? That's how we got those letters. Oh, that's why I did it. Because how do we get the letters? There it is. Sorry about that. So the A proposition is called the universal affirmative, right? Meaning it has universal quantity and has affirmative quality. The E proposition is the universal negative, which means it has universal quantity, negative quality, right? The I proposition is called the particular affirmative, which means it has particular quantity, affirmative quality, and the O proposition is called a particular negative, which means it has a particular quantity and a negative quality, right? That's what we call here these propositions, right? Now, once we know these propositions, then we have to understand the rules of distribution. Again, all this stuff you have to know. So I'm taking it step by step because once I get to the 3rd part of the unit, when we're actually solving or trying to figure out if an argument is valid, one way we're going to do it is, since we're not going to do it Venn diagram style, we're going to do it through rules of inference and rules of validity. And so in this case, we have to know universality, we have to know particularity, we have to know quality, we have to know rules of distribution, right? By rules of distribution, we mean, what are we saying about all the members of the class? That's what we mean by distribution. So, all members of the class, which of the 4 terms, which of the 4 propositions, which proposition has distribution? The A distributes the subject. The E distributes both. The I distributes neither subject nor predicate. The O distributes predicate only. All right? That's where we're going to end with this. Wait, you know what? Let me remind you of something. So, at this stage, okay, I got all this information. How do I remember this stuff? Yeah, obviously you just sit down and hammer your head, hammer it down. But around 2013 or so, a good friend of mine, also a student here, one of your Delta Tau Delta fraternity brothers, Adam Schuler, he came to my office one day and said, Doc, I have a pneumatic device that I want to use to help students to know the rules of distribution. I said, so what are you going to do? He said, Doc, so what does this mean? I hope you can see over here Let me go ahead and erase. I'm not going to erase the validity. He says, any student earning B's is not on probation. Now, he looked at me and said, Doc, do you understand what I'm saying here? That any student earning B's is not on probation. I said, sure, I understand what you said. They shouldn't be on probation. Probation is under a 2.0. If you're a sophomore or higher, blah, 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 blah. I said, no, that's not what I'm saying. Look what's going on. In the A proposition, the subject is distributed. In the E proposition, both are distributed. In the I proposition, neither is distributed. In the O proposition, the predicate is distributed only. If you remember that, in rule of distribution, on your 4 categorical propositions, and when we get to the in here in section 3, you won't have no problem solving for validity. All right? That's standard categorical propositions. That's your first unit. That's your first instance of homework. Enjoy it. Have fun. Any questions, email me, call me. Thank you for listening. If you are watching this and you're not in my class, sorry to bore you. But you should be listening in the first place because they got nothing to do with you. But anyway, peace. Be safe.